This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. Gals,
won't you come out tonight? Come out tonight. Come out tonight. Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? Say, Mary, now, what'd you wish for when you threw that rock?
Oh, no.
Oh, Mary, you can tell me.
No, if I told you, it wouldn't come true.
Come on, Mary, what do you want? Do you want the moon? Just say the words and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it right down.
I don't believe in the moon.
Say, that's not a bad idea. You'd swallow it. But you don't believe in the moon?
No.
Mary, what on earth are you talking about? It's right there.
Well, it's obvious. You can tell just by looking at it it's a two-dimensional object. Well, I bet you think the Earth is a globe.
Now, wait a minute. Wait just a minute, Mary. Hold on. A two-dimensional... Now, Mary, we sent a man up there on that moon. He went up and climbed through outer space.
Oh, you don't really believe that crap, do you?
What, don't believe? What in God's green earth am I hearing, Mary? I think you hit your head in the bushes over there. That's the moon.
Oh, look at all the photos they show us. Where are the stars? The shadows are all wrong.
Now, you listen here, Mary. Old Glory is flying high up on that moon.
Oh, now that's the biggest lie of all. If we had really planted that flag on the moon, it wouldn't be flapping in the wind. Well, because there'd be no wind.
Well, that's because they designed a special flag for the photo, Mary. It has a parallel beam perpendicular to the moon's surface. Otherwise, the flag would just be hanging there. And you don't see the stars because of the camera exposure.
Cameras? What cameras? George, did you see a camera reflecting off of Neil Armstrong's helmet when he took the selfie?
What in holy hell's a selfie?
Everything was staged to make America think we beat the Russians. One giant leap for mankind, my behind.
Hey, what are you waiting for? Why don't you tell that broad the third law of thermodynamics?
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Ready?
So we are going back for another prototype.
With who?
Yeah.
This is setting us back 4 years. We can't land on the moon. We aren't touching down for 5 years.
Do you understand what this means? NASA can't do it. They can't land man and come back. We can make a film that shows us going to the moon without actually doing it. Kubrick is getting NASA to make sure that his space movie looks like real space. And so we're going to use his space movie to make sure the real space movie looks like space. Do you understand how crazy that is?
Have you ever had an ethical problem with this at all?
This is like one of those good lies, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. You are being paranoid.
If they find out what we're doing, then we're dead.
Have you heard of the conspiracy theory before?
Yeah, I think we're in one.
We ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Houston, we've had a problem.
This is the planet Earth, our planet. It is a small planet wrapped in clouds, but for us it is a very important place. It is home. But supposing we look away from the Earth and travel in our imaginations across the vast starry stretches of outer space. Then we can imagine other stars. Stranger stars by far than ever shone in our night sky. And planets, too. This calm, serene orb, sailing majestically among the myriad stars of the firmament. Perhaps this star, too, is home for somebody. Can we imagine the sort of people that might live on a star like this? Let us go very close. Let us look and listen very carefully. And perhaps we shall see and hear. That is a clanger.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and
that is another clanger.
And that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. Because there's no gravity. And I'm a diver, scuba diver, and when you get down underneath the water, you're floating. And that's just like in space. Until you start to move, and then you make waves or...
Zoe, what do you say?
Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh boy. Houston, we have a problem.
Oh, jeez. You drink a Red Bull. Red Bull gives you wings.
What should we do?
Well, nothing. Come back to Earth and we'll shoot the whole thing in a studio.
Okay.
Capricorn 1, which of course is the film that a lot of people speculate and say that Capricorn 1 started all the Apollo hoax rumours.
Cronkite was talking with somebody who was doing one of the Apollo shots. They cut to what they called a simulation, and it was mock-ups and models done on a stage, and it looked exactly like the real thing. And I said, wow, how do we know?
It's a great simulation of what you can see there, if you could see it.
That little fly speck is supposed to be a lens.
As soon as they stepped foot on the moon on Apollo 11, there were people who just didn't believe it from the get-go. And this is in America as well. So it's not something you're really that conscious of these days. You think it's a new thing, really, since the 80s and beyond. But no, there were people from day one who wouldn't believe us.
I'm not quite sure what to believe and what not to believe. I mean, originally when they did step on the moon, there were a lot of people that said that was not true. One just doesn't know what to think anymore.
But the big question is, there's obviously the theory is that you didn't land on the moon. So, but why would people have that theory? Or those different theories that they come up with?
I'm not sure why they would have that theory.
Yeah.
I've always maintained it would have been harder to fake it and hide it.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you think about it. It just takes one person to go spill.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
join us now on a quest for the truth to the moon. In this film, we shall not only prove beyond all reasonable doubt that many of the official NASA images of lunar exploration are fake, but we shall also examine the motives for the biggest lie put before the world. Why did NASA repeatedly fake lunar images and photographs? Why did NASA stage lunar expeditions which did not happen? The answer will surprise you. NASA spent gigantic sums of money during the 1960s, but most of it was spent on the ground, not in space. huge American corporations, many of which were manufacturing hardware for the military, made gigantic profits designing space vehicles and, more importantly, life-sized models of spaceships, and even huge stage sets resembling the lunar surface. Someone in NASA had realized that after taking billions of dollars from the American people, if they couldn't make it to the moon, they would fake it to the moon.
Obviously, if you're going to somewhere that nobody has been before, you need to have a simulator which recreates that environment as closely as you can. If you're going to the moon, you recreate the surface of the moon. And here we see a section of the lunar surface created. It's about 30 foot high, 30 foot long, 35 foot long. Scale is given by the two people standing in front of it. There were plenty of simulation exercises, but the point is, and this should be taken into account in virtually everything that is discussed with the Apollo program, 400,000 people may have worked on the program in total, but none of them had a need to know more than his own job required. The people who were making the rockets didn't know what the people who were making the spacesuits were doing, because they had no need to know about that. Their job was to make the best models and the best simulation of the lunar surface that they could. And if we come up to this picture here, we see the three scales on which these models were built. We have here the whole moon as one unit. It stands about 20 foot high. We have here behind it a section of the surface of the moon. You'll notice it's curved. And here we have a more detailed section of the lunar surface.
What you're saying is that the images which we're told show a camera pointing out the window of the lunar module as it's coming into land on the moon could well have been filmed previously using these large-scale models.
That's right. It could well be that what we are looking at are films of realistic models. We have no means of knowing if they were actually taken on the lunar surface, or whether what we're watching is part of the simulation exercise and the training exercise. And you'll notice here on these models there is a camera track. A camera starting at this end, coming down here, would approach the moon, or appear to approach the moon, and become ever closer towards it. This is a simulation rig that was built. This is the command and service module of the Apollo program. And you'll notice that the window here looks out onto a block here, and there's another one here. They're curved. These are the screens onto which the lunar surface was projected as the craft made a simulated approach towards the lunar surface.
Is what we're seeing a mixture of fact and fiction?
It is fact, it is fiction. It's mixed together. It's hard to separate them until you examine it closely. If a spacecraft is in deep space, the only possible explanation for a light seen through the window of the spacecraft is the sun. It's the only bright light in space. If it's not the sun, then it has to be some other artificial light, which implies that that particular image is possibly fiction.
July 1961. NASA was soon being criticized for the flimsy construction of their hardware. The first orbital capsules did not even have windows in them for the astronauts to look out of. One of the most vocal critics was one of NASA's most respected astronauts, an all-American hero named Virgil Gus Grissom, who almost drowned when recovery helicopters were unable to lift his space capsule from the sea. After a successful journey into space, Gus Grissom almost died through NASA's bad planning. Or was this an early attempt to silence Gus Grissom? May 1963. Astronaut Gordon Cooper experiences re-entry problems in his Faith 7 rocket ship. The prototype lunar module, known as the LIM, had serious stability problems. At this stage, there was no guarantee that even if NASA managed to get a spaceship orbiting the moon, they could land safely without killing the crew. Could the footage which we see of the LIM approaching the moon be filmed in a TV studio?
It was filmed in a TV studio. There's absolutely no doubts whatsoever about that. And the way that this film was created was by the use of models. There's nothing secret about the models. They exist. You can go and see them today. The models were very lifelike, very realistic. There is one that is a life-size model. It's in Flagstaff in Arizona. It's 2 miles long, and it's an exact replica of the Sea of Tranquility. The photographs were used to create from those images the replica of the Sea of Tranquility, so that if it was flown over in a helicopter, it would appear as if it was a spacecraft approaching a similar area to land. So yes, all the scenes of the lunar surface were filmed on Earth.
Radiation, and without having spacesuits nor spacecraft which can protect the occupants from radiation, NASA convinced the American people to pay $40 billion for the space program.
The most lethal forms of radiation, of course, are at the higher end of the spectrum. That's gamma rays and X-rays. We know what ultraviolet can do. If you stay out too long in the sun, you get sunburn and skin cancer and die, and it's all very sad. But gamma rays, and X-rays especially, are particularly lethal to humans, unprotected humans. There was no protection that I have been able to identify. I've found no reference to it. I found nothing that will tell me what level of protection is offered, so I have to assume none was. I've contacted the manufacturers of the spacesuits, and they said there was no radiation protection built into the spacesuits, because I asked them if these same spacesuits could be used by technicians to go into Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island, because the nuclear reactors produce the same radiation as produced in space. They said no, not advisable, no protection.
We didn't deny Sputnik was up. We didn't argue about the science or shrink our research and development budget. We built a space program almost overnight, and 12 years later we were walking on the moon.
All the pictures that they take, walking on the moon. I know that it's a fake, walking on the moon. They think they're so clever, walking on the moon. They can laugh forever, walking on the So they say we're sending people to outer space. No way gonna be a moon base. It's our fate, rocking on the moon. So they say we're sending people to outer space. No way, there's never gonna be a moon base. It's our fate. All the pictures that they take, walking on the moon. I know that it's a thing, walking on the moon. They think they're so clever, walking on the moon. They can last forever, walking on the moon.
Okay, I'm talking with Bill Casing, and Bill Casing is what you might call a pioneer in this whole issue of getting at truth and reality, and specifically in the area of the Apollo moon missions, what happened and what didn't happen. When the module set down on the surface of the moon, the amount of propulsion that would have been required to do that, and it leaves no cloud of dust, no crater.
Right. Having seen hundreds of rocket firings when I was employed by Rocketdyne, I know that the jet of the lunar module lander, the lunar lander, would have created an enormous crater. It would have scoured the moon's surface. It would have tossed up rocks, sand, everything, and created a crater maybe so large that the entire lunar lander could have sunk into it. After all, we're dealing with a 10,000-pound thrust engine, which is pointed directly at the surface, lowered into the surface, and yet, if you look at pictures of the lunar lander on the moon, there is no disturbance whatsoever under the lunar lander's rocket.
And no dust deposited in the pads, the cup-shaped pads at the bottom.
That's another good point. Dust would have been blown 6 ways from Sunday and would have landed everywhere.
And then the famous scene, which has been played over and over, where they are landing there, but they're setting down, and you're hearing the astronaut talking through it.
Oh, that's a good point. I let's say, became aware of that only recently, that here's Neil Armstrong talking about landing on the moon with a microphone, and yet he's sitting practically on top of a rocket engine that is putting out sound levels of about 140 or 150 decibels. Now, we know that that is absolutely impossible to overcome that sound level inside the lunar lander with a normal human voice.
Eagle, we got you now. It's looking good, over. Roger, copy. Eagle, Houston, after yaw around, angles, S-band pitch, -9er, yaw, +18. Roger, you're a go to continue power descent. You're a go to continue power descent.
Altitude now 21,000 feet, still looking very good. Velocity down now to 1,200 feet per second.
You're looking great to us, Eagle. Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm. Roger, we got you. We're going at alarm.
Good radar data. We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Altitude 4,200.
Houston, you're a go for landing, over. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Copy. Alarm.
Altitude 1,600. 1,400 feet, still looking very good.
700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet, down at 19. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. We're go. Same type. We're go. Altitude, velocity light. 3.5 down. 220 feet. 15 forward. 11 forward, coming down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. Good. 40 feet, down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Okay, we've changed our graphic picture here in the background, and it's a one-sheet poster that I put together from pictures on the website www.geocities.com/ApolloReality/. And the gentleman that put this together got actually these images off the Langley Research Center website. And some of these actually you're just seeing for the first time yourself, isn't that right, Bill?
That's right, yeah. I'm amazed to find these pictures. I've never seen any of them before except the one in the upper right. And what amazes me is this one here showing a model of the moon with a camera track, showing how easily it would have been to fake the filming of the moon.
And then the image just to the right of that shows like the finished moon.
Exactly.
With somebody sitting at the controls, maybe turning it or...
Right. These are very revealing pictures, and I strongly recommend people with PCs to download them and study them. And of course this brings up the subject of the death of whistleblowers. Men like Gus Grissom, who was burned to death along with Chafee and White.
He went pretty open with it, putting a lemon on
yeah, he was going to give an interview about what he really thought about Apollo. And as you say, he hung a lemon on the command capsule on the day that he was murdered. And we should also look at Scott Grissom, his son's evidence that a secret switch was installed in the capsule to ignite the fire that killed Grissom, Chafee, and White. We could go on for quite a while about the death and injury to people that have pursued this Apollo hoax subject very diligently.
They went to a NASA spokesman who was Brian Welch.
Oh yes,
and
right.
They asked him about some of these anomalies.
Right.
You recall what he had, what he said about some of the things they were asking him?
He tried to dispute everything that the Apollo hoax advocates brought out. But the interesting thing is that about a month after he gave this interview, he was dead.
That always kind of puzzled me because he was at least trying to hold on to it, right? So
Do you think they would have actually killed him just because he didn't do a good enough job? Or?
Yes, I think that's what happened. He didn't do a good enough job. So they killed him as an example to other people who are defending, like Richard Hoagland. Hoagland obviously is a fake, and he's an employee of NASA who on many occasions has tried to discredit me and my associates.
Werner von Braun, born Silesia 1912, nationality American. Boss of a group of former German rocket scientists, today understandably jubilant.
The greatest day in our life, I think, that a lot of my colleagues are close to retirement or been retired already, will see this as a fulfillment in their life, in their professional life.
Well, a long dream has come true on this day, and I think everybody who has been somehow involved in this project will be extremely happy.
Huntsville, Alabama is the heart of the American rocket industry, and it wears its heart on its sleeve. Of the group of 120 rocket scientists and engineers that von Braun brought with him in 1945, more than half are still here. They've become the folk who live on the hill, in a part of town known sometimes locally as Huntsville.
I think it's probably basically a romantic drive that motivated me. But with romanticism alone, you don't build these things. They're pretty demanding with respect to perfection. They're pretty unforgiving too. There's no such thing as a 99.9% success. That 0.1% can still lead to a complete failure.
Say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. To go to the moon. We choose 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 to go to the moon. Choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
your opinion, how have we done since 1957?
Well, I think NASA unfortunately became the agency to nowhere. It just spun wheels, went around the planet Earth. The space station was supposed to be the gateway for Mars and the planets, and that became a big turkey in outer space. So I think we've been basically spinning wheels for 50 years.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
The space station will be our gateway to the universe, our foothold in outer space, the keystone of our space program. With it as our base camp, we will be able to reach the planets and perhaps one day to the stars.
What are the experiments that are being conducted geared towards future, longer space travel and exploration?
A lot of the experiments we're doing up here really directly relate to those long duration missions that will take us beyond low Earth orbit, beyond low Earth orbit. Q, Mark.
The time has come to look beyond brief encounters. We must commit ourselves anew to a sustained program of manned exploration of the solar system, and yes, the permanent settlement of space. Back to the moon, back to the future, and this time back to stay. The Space Council will report back to me as soon as possible with concrete recommendations to chart a new and continuing course to the moon and Mars and beyond. And now we're going to sign this proclamation.
It took us 8 years to get to the moon the first time, 50 years ago, when we had never done it before. You know, after years of cost overruns and slipped deadlines, we're actually being told that the earliest we can get back to the moon is 2028.
NASA came in with a vacuum-packed, glass enclosed moon rock that was taken off the moon in 1969. It's 3.6 billion years old. I mean, I may be wrong about it, but that's what I think.
Good morning, I'm Steve Inskeep. A prized possession in the Dutch National Museum is not what the curators thought. Back in 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts visited the Netherlands, and the U.S. ambassador gave the Dutch Prime Minister what he said was a moon rock. No doubt it gave a warm feeling to the U.S. ally. But when an expert saw it in the National Museum, he said he wasn't so sure it was real. Geologists have now identified the moon rock as petrified wood.
In the past 30 years, no human being has set foot on another world or ventured farther upward into space than 386 miles. Today, I announce a new plan to explore space and extend a human presence across our solar system. Using the Crew Exploration Vehicle, we will undertake extended human missions to the moon as early as 2015. With the experience and knowledge gained on the moon, we will then be ready to take the next steps of space exploration, human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond.
Two words, the moon. This is the key focus of the fiscal 2020 budget being proposed by the Civil Space Agency today. Now, according to NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, quote, "We will go to the moon in the next decade with innovative new technologies and systems to explore more locations across the lunar surface than ever before." A series of small delivery missions this year. Then we've got new landers expected, robots eventually, according to NASA, humans by 2028.
The moon was 50 years ago. What's been the delay? The moon was 50 years ago. What's been the delay?
I was strolling on the moon one day in a merry, merry month of December. May, when much to my surprise.
So, yes, the moon was like 50 years ago, and why haven't we, essentially colonized it up until now?
Hippity hoppity, hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale. Da 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 da. Hippity hopping along.
Nobody is more committed to manned spaceflight, to human exploration of space, than I am. But we've got to do it in a smart way. And unlike the previous program, we are setting a course with specific and achievable milestones. Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
After spending more than 45 years in low Earth orbit, President Trump and our entire administration believe that it is time to push onward to new horizons and new destinations.
Today, NASA is essentially trapped in low Earth orbit.
If NASA is not currently capable of landing American astronauts on the moon in 5 years, we need to change the organization, not the mission.
Today, NASA is essentially trapped in low Earth orbit.
And if commercial rockets are the only way to get American astronauts to the moon in the next 5 years, then commercial rockets it will be.
Today, NASA is essentially trapped in low Earth orbit.
And in December, I signed a historic directive that will return Americans to the moon for the first time since 1972, if you can believe that. For the first time since 1972, if you can believe that. can believe that.
It's time to go. There is no gain, you are receding. A distant ship, smoke on the horizon. You are only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say. When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of my eye.
Hey, Globey, I wonder when the ISS is going to pass over my head.
I smoke weed. Weed don't make you do that. What the?
That next giant leap is to return American astronauts to the moon within the next 5 years, by any means necessary.
We did it all with models out in the desert that really wasn't real. We had faked the whole thing.
Dr. von Braun believed it would take what he called, in his words, enabling technology for us to return to the lunar surface.
Today, we know you're not flat. You're a sphere.
The Washington Post went out and did a survey, and here were the results. It said that 20 million Americans said that it was possible that man never landed on the moon. There's actually a group called the Flat Earth Research Society International. It was quoted in this article.
Yeah, they made me a lifetime member of the Flat Earth Society.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on this good earth.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
So listen up. You has heard about the moon and about space. You better learn about these things from my man Buzz Lightyear here. So you better realize that these things is important. Big up yourself.
is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.